Okay, this morning we're going to look at some pretty familiar photos, some pretty familiar scenes. The scenes are going to be from the February 2011 Christchurch earthquake. These were photos that were taken when I was working for the church's development and humanitarian arm. It was called the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, ADRA. ADRA was who we worked for. Now, ADRA is one of these organisations of the church that covers things like disasters, community development, internationally and nationally. So in New Zealand, it's a worldwide network. Each country has an ADRA. So there'll be ADRA Australia, there'll be ADRA Germany, there'll be America, there's all of these sort of things. But we're talking about ADRA New Zealand. Now, ADRA New Zealand is divided into several parts. There is a person called Robert who looks after our emergency management. Robert's a world expert in disasters, managing disasters, very regulated sort of an industry. Victoria looks after the ADRA New Zealand international programs, where we work mostly in Southeast Asia, but all over the world. I look after the national program, which is things like parenting programs, addiction programs, the stuff that goes wrong in our community here. So here we have these scenes. Here we have a time when the city of Christchurch is destroyed, disrupted, in quite a bit of chaos because of this huge disaster of an earthquake. So at the time, we're based in Auckland, so we're in the North Island, down the south. Christchurch is being hit. And we're at a time where ADRA New Zealand is not in a good position because our CEO was overseas. Our disaster management expert was overseas. So we ended up trying to get ourselves organised, ready to go, put a responder team together, try to make sure that we had everything that we needed, that we'd thought of everything. This is the sort of scenes that we would see. We would see houses falling down, we would see all sorts of buildings destroyed, but we did have an ally. We did have a friend. Part of the church's network was also the Sanitarium Health Food Company, based in Papanui, pretty much undamaged, turned into a triage centre immediately. Now, the factory at Papanui, it had suffered some damage with losses of product, but basically the distribution centre was still intact. And they immediately just said, look, we're going to do whatever it takes to do. There's a need, we can fill the need, can ADRA coordinate it? And yes, we could coordinate it. We put a team together. We've got Victoria, who was our leader, our team leader. We had Pierre, who's the general manager of Sanitarium. And he was like a dynamo. It was absolutely fantastic working with him. We had Pastor Gillis, who was the head of the South New Zealand Conference of the Church Network. I was running logistics because I sort of was involved over the years of promoting the work of ADRA throughout the churches. I knew a lot of people, and then we shipped in Ashley from ADRA Australia. Now, Ashley's job was to write what we call situation reports, because everything runs off funding. We need to let our donors know what we're doing. And sit reps are the key to it. Proposals to different organisations to look for support. At the time, everybody wants to know what's going on. Everybody wants to help. Everybody wants to be involved. Our local churches had some really strong partners. One of the strongest was a guy called Bill Donaldson, who had a tyre business. Now, Bill would make sure that he just rang up and he said, whatever you want, just let me know. Pastor Mel Trevina, now he's a guy that you really need when there's a disaster going on, because he is a ferret. He could ferret out stuff from all over the place. If you wanted something, you talk to Pastor Mel, a great guy. Alan Bowman, Alan and his wife Kathleen, they know everybody in the South Island. They know where everything is. These are the people that we needed to cooperate with, that we collaborated with. Within hours, we actually had one of the first food distribution programs running. Out of the back of a trailer, roads were chaos. We couldn't get anywhere. We had to go with the seat of our pants. We had to actually get out and do stuff. And here's Pierre delivering stuff. Here's our people delivering stuff within hours of this disaster out to welfare centres. Victoria is re-establishing some of the connections that she had from her time with Red Cross, mostly in water and sanitation. Sanitarium actually had a really good water source. This water source was putting out something like 750 litres per minute of clean, good drinking water. That was great. So within the first few days, our water station started to build up. This is a team of Chinese church members, the C3 Church in Christchurch. A guy called Jackson was their leader. He just arrived with his team and he said, "What can I do to help? What can I do?" They immediately set up, we put our water station in place. We had people arriving with wheelbarrows, with prams, with buckets, with bottles, with all sorts of things, and we gave them water. That's what they needed. That's for the first thing that they really needed. So we had all of these things, not the most hygienic. We were still advising people to boil the water. We had to have our water source tested, but it was at least up and running. This group of people here, these are free coffees for the emergency workers. A whole team of these little coffee vans went down day and night, just hot chocolates, all of these sort of things, just helping out people. Until they came to us one day and they said, "Look, it's great, we've got the water, we're up and running, we can't get milk." And it was funny that I rang Dwight from Fonterra and I said, "Man, we need some milk." You know, we got something like 14 pallets of long life milk within the day. And it was all sent to Sanitarium. It was all based in the distribution centre. It was all part of the package that we actually could access. It was fantastic. Sanitarium also sourced these water bladders, plastic bladders that we could tear off in a sheet. They were clean. Within an hour of asking for them, they were on a plane and heading for Christchurch. These were times that were absolutely fantastic. We met up with another crowd called 0800 Hungry, run by a guy called Kerry Bensaman. Now, he runs a community food program and things like that, and he was later given the QSM. Now, this is a guy that really had some contacts. And him and we had a bit of a black market going on all sorts of fruit juices and products and stuff like that. We were swapping this for that and that for this. We really got on well, and he was a great guy. He had a good operation, tons of product, and using our church networks, we were able to distribute stuff through our volunteers. Here's Pastor Jezreel. Now, he had his team, and he would go around and he would deliver food up and down streets to welfare centres, to sports stadiums, to local clubs that were opening their doors. On one of his trips, they actually found an old lady who'd been living alone for 3 days. She's in a wheelchair. She's blind. She had a son living with her, but she hadn't seen her son for 3 days. He'd gone downtown and hadn't come back. These were desperate things. We were able to get her aid. We were able to get her connected with people that would help her. But the hub, the centre, that Papanui factory, absolutely brilliant. Great gardens. People used to come there and have their wedding photos taken. In fact, in the middle of all the chaos, this young couple came in and they said, "Look, can we still have our wedding photos taken?" And we said, "Sure." We gave them special wedding photos. They came in and they actually handed the whole wedding party, handed out bladders of water. It was absolutely great. So here we've got downtown was chaos. It was closed off by the army. You couldn't get in and out. You were very restricted as to where you could go. And it sort of set up quite a lot of problems with the aid agencies needing to cooperate and link in with each other, but nowhere to do it. So they couldn't get to their offices, they couldn't get access to a lot of their volunteer bases, they didn't have their data, and so they were meeting at Sanitarium. And each time we tried to get meetings and there would be talk about, well, we can't get here and we can't get on this road and we can't get... We were looking at practical solutions, and Victoria just said to me, "Get bicycles. We'll go by bicycle." So we made our meetings on bicycles and stuff like that. That was actually quite innovative. Here we've got, these are the scenes that you would see in a typical street. You know, power was out, sewer was out, water was out, whole suburbs were closed. Not every house in the street Some houses were untouched, but most of them, it was just out of control. This is a typical scene you would find in your driveway. This stuff called liquefaction would come up from the bottom of the earth, would come up, and it may come up in the middle of your house. It might come up on your lawn, your driveway, the roadway, the frontage. It could be anywhere. Liquefaction is like this pumicey, sandy, cementy type gunk that you would shovel it and put it into a wheelbarrow. And if you just kick that wheelbarrow a couple of times, all the water would come to the top. That gives you an example of what this liquefaction was. So you end up with a sticky, gooey mess. Into that mess, your car would get stuck. And once your car was stuck, you were there for some time. These were pretty much standard scenes around the place. How were we to deal with that? Well, the local people were told, if you get this stuff and you get it to the street, the council will come round with a truck and a digger and take it away, which is really good. But what would happen is that each street had a mountain, and some of them were 2 and 3 meters high, a mountain of this liquid, dusty stuff that when the Canterbury February sun and the wind hits it, you end up with dust. And this dust is like a talcum powder, would get into everything. Chaos was also going on where you couldn't buy fuel, you couldn't use phones, you had all sorts of things going on. And here we are still getting our teams together, getting stuff around the place. Here's a local basketball stadium out east, Cal Stadium, and that was turned into a welfare centre. So this would be the scene that you would be met with. Here we've got our volunteers. There's a guy called Owen in his truck. Now Owen has actually written a book on some of his experiences after this earthquake. Makes a really good read. So here we've got, he would be typical of hundreds of people that just dropped. There was no work going on. They were just helping each other. It was one of those situations. We also found a volunteer from Germany, a German tourist called Faldo. Now he arrives and he's got a caravan and he's got his family. He's on holiday in New Zealand and he decides he's going to help. He's got this huge, great Land Cruiser and we hooked him up to this massive trailer. And one thing about him, that when he took off, once he had his high-vis vest on and his hard hat, that meant that not many road rules applied to him. He would pull out in front of traffic, and he was, of course, sign written with all the ADRA colours and things like that. So he was a bit of a handful, but he could deliver more product to more places than anybody else. So we've got our distribution centre. We've got product coming from all over the country, because the New Zealand Food and Grocery Council had found that people couldn't get this product distributed through the normal channels. But Sanitarium was still going, and we were told that, hey, we will distribute it for you. So we ended up with, after about a week or so, Sanitarium needed to get back to their core business, which is health food. But we've got health food in one section of their warehouse. We've got chocolate bars, we've got all sorts of stuff everywhere. It was just absolutely unbelievable how generous people can be. So we end up, each day, we would get together as a team and we would pray. And we would pray that we would get results. We would pray that we would do things right. We would pray that things would happen. And one of the things we prayed for that we wanted was our own warehouse, our own facility. We had to get away from Sanitarium to let them get back into business, to let them get back to normal. We looked at the Firestone Tyre Company and we thought that would be ideal, but it didn't quite work out. It was just down the road. But right next door to Sanitarium, right through the fence, was an old, unused hire company. And it had this building, but we couldn't find the owner. We managed to locate the agent who was selling it on behalf of the owner, and I went to him and I said to him, man, this is what we want to do. We've got to do this, we want to do that, we want to do the other thing. And he said, look, everybody wants this place. The City Council want it. The Salvation Army wants it. Civil Defence wants it. Everybody wants it. And I said, well, we want it. And you know, the next morning I got a phone call. If I could meet him there, he'll give us the key. The owner has agreed to let us have it, no charge, as long as we need it. And so we set up the ADRA distribution centre. And we handled the biggest range of products, still using the forklifts from Sanitarium. We had everything coming and going. We had Jackie, who we set up as our coordinator there. And then a guy called Murray Scott arrived, and he said, I want to help. Now, I didn't really know Murray. And I said to Murray, well, what do you do, Murray? He said, I'm a retired storeman with Sanitarium. He knew every product number. He knew the whole system. He knew how to make things go. He logged and controlled every box, pallet, truck, trailer that came in, went out, the whole thing. Absolutely terrific. So we ended up shipping stuff all over Christchurch, really. We ended up with another secret weapon, our key partner, which was this little church in Aranui, opened in October 1956. This quite strange little church, this is it in full living colour, and here we see it's a concrete block building. It's got a couple of things going for it. It's got a couple of things not going for it, but the things that were going for it was that it had a yard. Now, it was a bit of a dusty, sandy yard and all the rest of it, but that was what we needed. What it had not going for it was sort of going to fall down. It had cracks in the concrete because I think when they built it, I think they sort of shortcut a few reinforcing steel links in it. But anyway, so if you went inside it, you could actually see the cracks in the walls, and you could look through the cracks and see the cars coming down the street. But however, it was a place where we were distributing product on right in the eastern side of the town, where the needs were really the highest. So we had our fence here. It says now serving free meals. And these are the things, as I say every day, where we prayed that stuff would go right for us. And I started to look at, in Jeremiah, it says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans for welfare, not for evil, to give you a future and hope. And the key is hope. Because here, how do we give people hope? You know, we're handing them out. We put a shipping container on the property. Now, the shipping container, we just wanted to distribute food from inside it. We wanted to have it as a place where we could bring the stuff from our Papanui branch out to Aranui and serve the suburbs of Wainoni and all out the east where the need was the highest. We also brought down our little Adra food caravan from Nelson. It was good for distributing food. It was just one of those things, hey, it might come in handy, so we got it in place. Now, one of the things that we really didn't have in the neighbourhood were toilets. So the council and civil defence had advised that you dig a hole, you put a plastic bag, and that's your toilet. About every 500 metres up the road, they would put these portable toilets in place, and that's what you used. Well, the thing is, that in the middle of the night and in the early morning, you could see some really strange sights of people walking along with a plastic bag and dropping them in the portaloo. And then, of course, when the cleaning trucks would come along with their big vacuum pipes and clean the portaloos out, they couldn't handle the plastic bags. There was stuff blowing all over the place. It was not nice. So we needed to get some portaloos. So I said to Pastor Mel, mate, can you get us get a couple of portaloos? He said, you can't get them. Off he goes, he said, I'll see what I can do. Well, within a couple of hours, Mel is back with a trailer-mounted portaloo, and I thought, you beauty. Then we open up the second container. There's something inside it, and it's a portaloo. I rang the shipping container company and said, hey, thanks very much for the portaloo. And they said, what portaloo? We didn't know there was a portaloo in there. You know, God looks after us. So we end up with our water containers and stillages and things like that. We end up with still distributing the water. We end up putting tables from the old Aranui church out, and we sit people down and we feed them. Because we had seen so much abuse of people's generosity. We would have people come to us at the distribution centre, and they would have the story of all the family. I've got this many people staying here, and we would load them up with product. Car loads, van loads, truck loads, trailer loads. Off they would go. But in my course of travelling around and going to the different welfare centres, I would see the same cars. I would see the same people. I would hear the same stories. And this is why we decided that here we would do things a bit different. What we would do is that we would actually feed people. We would sit them down, we would feed them a meal. As we spoke to them, as we talked to them, we would find out they've got children, they've got people, they're local. And if they got up to go, we would give them boxes of stuff. We would give them what they needed. And we would invite them back. We would invite them back. We would also charge their cell phones. We would feed their pets. We would give them soap, toothpaste, all of these sort of things. And we actually let them sit down and talk to each other. We ended up with this village, this community. And as they spoke to each other, we'd made a conscious effort of doing this in a certain way. First of all, we tried to not have the high-vis vests. Get some sort of normality. I would encourage our volunteers to invite people to sit down and sit with them and eat with them. Talk to them. Start the conversations. Get one table talking to another table. Get them all linking together, discussing their issues, talking about their problems, but also coming up with solutions and encouraging each other. And at that point, I would say to our volunteers, then move away. Move to another table. Start it again somewhere else. In the peak of this program, we were feeding 500 people a day in this little, dusty, unsealed car park of the Aranui Church. And this is where we saw some really great healing happening. And we know that in the Bible it says for everything there is a season, a time to plant and a time to pluck up and all that sort of stuff. But here it is here, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance. In other words, just be friendly. Become involved with your neighbours. Become involved with your people. Become involved with what's going on. But becoming involved, you see, you've got to also remember that here we've got Victoria and we've got Ashley doing their situation reports, doing their proposals, doing the high-level stuff. We're down here just feeding people and just doing the nuts and bolts stuff. But poor old Ashley from Australia had no idea some of the names of the suburbs, where everything was. And in the end, Victoria decided that she would bring Ashley out to see what was going on. And it was also a bit of a revelation to her because what was going on in Aranui, she wasn't quite up with. It sort of happened. It just happened. So they come out there and they meet the people. And we met some really hard case people. Now this guy I call Shades. He's got the full face tattoo. He's one of life's characters. And he would be the sort of guy that really embraced the idea of talking to people. He's not a member of our church. He just arrived and he would stay most of the day and he would eat and he would drink and he would laugh and he would talk and he was just one of those happy-go-lucky guys. And I remember watching him one day talking to one of the ladies that used to come there. There was a few old ladies who would come along and he's talking to her and they were deep in this conversation and this woman had lost her pet dog. And she was heartbroken about it. And the sadness that was coming out of her, all of a sudden I noticed that as he's talking to her, the shades come down over his eyes. His arm goes around her shoulder and they're consoling each other. And it was just absolutely brilliant to watch. You know, the old ladies were great. They had nowhere else to go. And they would sit there and we would have to move close to the containers as the sun moved around the building. We would feed their dogs. We would talk to them. And we would just chat to them. Myra here and her family arrived and they were just absolutely brilliant. Her daughters set up the gluten-free bread, the toasters, whatever people brought along, we would distribute. We had these two hard case guys, and I'm talking hard case guys. They were living in bus stops. I mean, I think in the first 3 or 4 nights we moved, even our emergency response team, we couldn't get accommodation, not regular accommodation. I think we spent one night in a shed. But it was one of those things where we just moved around. These guys are living in a bus stop. They were living on a park bench. You know, it's February, it's not too bad, it's pretty cool. And I said to them, guys, what do you actually want? Oh, we'd really love a tent. And I leaned down and I picked up a tent because somebody within the last hour had dropped off a brand new tent. And these guys, it's just like, what? and the emotions that came out when they got their tent. You know, they were absolutely it was just so touching. And here we've got in Matthew, it says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find, knock and it will be opened. Everyone who asks receives. And it says there, which of you, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if you ask for a fish, will give him a serpent. In other words, God is going to give us what we need. And we saw these doors open every day, every hour of every day. Here we've got we would cook whatever people gave us. You can see the eggs, you can see the bread inside the caravan. The caravan had a fridge, maybe the size of this little stool here. Inside the fridge was a freezer. You could probably get a 2 litre of ice cream in that freezer. But if people said, can you use this? We would say, oh yes. Somebody rang and they said, have you got a freezer? Oh yes, we've got a freezer. I've got frozen meat pies. This is the parable of the pie. Frozen meat pies. Could you get rid of them? Yes, I said. A truck arrived with 12,800 frozen meat pies, and we had a day to get rid of them. Well, we had vans, we had everybody out delivering these things to the care centre, and at the end of the day, about 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, I only had about 600 frozen meat pies. Well, not quite so frozen, but 600 meat pies left. So I said to our volunteers, right, everybody grab these pies, go up and down the street, knock on the door and say, we've got pies, and they come in boxes of 12, and we got rid of the whole lot. So that was just something that more answers to prayer. We met a place called the Shelter Station in Auckland. They sent us down a roof that stretched between the 2 shipping containers. That now gave us a bit more shelter. They also sent us another building, a structure, which we put up, which we later christened the corporate box. And our little village started to grow. And as I say, we're feeding 500 people a day at the peak. And we've got all of this going on. Local work crews treated it as their smoko base, their morning tea place, their afternoon lunch bar, the whole thing. The advantages of that was we actually didn't have to worry too much about dust, because every day they would come in with their truck and they would water it down. When I wanted to put some stuff around the place, they would say, mate, we'll leave the digger over there. The key will be under the seat. Just help yourself. And our little village grew. This little church started to really grow up. The corporate box started to grow. We started to put the tables inside. We started to open later at night. It was getting a bit colder. People came in and they socialised. They mingled. They got involved with each other. We had a guy called Roger here who would, at the drop of a hat, pray with people. That was his gift. He started being one of the first guys to embrace the idea of sitting down and eating with people. After the second day, he came to me and he said, mate, I'll do anything for you. He said, but I can't eat anymore. He said, I'm having about 5 or 6 breakfasts. And I said, well, just do what you can. Do what you can. You know, with the valet parking. This sign here says, if you need washing done, dial so-and-so. There was a guy called Dennis, came from the Bishopdale Seventh-day Adventist Church. He came up with an idea where he ran a shuttle service where he would pick people up, take them to the other side of town where there was a church campground, and run a shuttle from the showers and the laundry. These guys were part of a Chinese basketball team. I'm sure one of them was 8 feet tall, and we wedged him into a 6-foot high caravan, and he cooked. He had a big wok and he cooked. And there was one lady, I sat down with her and I said, how was your dinner? She said it was absolutely fantastic. I said, well, what did you have for tea? And she said, I had cooked lettuce. And I thought, well, that sounds really weird. And another lady leaned over and she said, I had that too. She said it was absolutely beautiful. And I thought, I've never heard of cooked lettuce. And she said, well, Maybe because I haven't eaten anything green for a couple of weeks, but it was just absolutely fantastic. So I went into this guy and I said, hey, compliments from the diners out there. They absolutely love the way that you cook the lettuce. Well, it turns out he's never cooked anything in his life. But he just bunged what he saw the lettuce and he put it in the wok and he cooked it up and it came out really well. So, hey, things have a habit of coming right. The local Australian police, they used to come in and visit us. And then something else that came up. Another group decided that they would get the kids and they would do a face painting program. So all of these kids had their faces painted. There was balloons, there was just so much going on, and it was just brought that normality into a situation that was really in the middle of a disaster. We had our little, we had other people came in with drinks, caravans and things like that. And I'm going to play a clip. I'm going to play a little video clip, and I want you to watch this video clip because it's a video clip that Sanitarium Health Food Company had made after the disaster just to show from their perspective how things worked. And it talks about a lot of the things that I've gone over, but it also has at the end of it, there is one of the head people from the Food and Grocery Council who is one of our politicians, and she says at the end of it, she says something really, really nice. She recognises what we did. She recognises what the church did to heal the community. And she says something like, you had a plan. And I'm going to play this clip because it's just something that we found was absolutely spot on.
Within hours of February's devastating quake, we had checked that all our people were unhurt, then reconfigured our undamaged Sanitarium Papanui plant into an emergency triage and relief distribution centre. The ADRA emergency response team had been dispatched, and our General Manager, Pierre Van Den, was flying down to help coordinate Sanitarium's response.
As a company, we really value our employees. And the first thing we needed to do was to make sure our staff and their families were being cared for. And after that, we could turn to look at what we can do in the community. Our site in Christchurch has been used as a triage site. We made that available for the emergency teams. The next thing we did is we provided water from our bore.
We set up a station where the public could come in and fill their containers with water as they required, and that's still operating now. Staff were taking turns at manning it along with the ADRA organisation, which works closely with Sanitarium.
We could see that people were bringing containers to which weren't always clean, they weren't always particularly large, they didn't always have a cover on them to stop the water getting contaminated. So Sanitarium managed to source 10,000 10-litre water bladders for people to be able to carry home and use at home and be confident that the water they were drinking was clean and fit for purpose.
The February 22nd quake was a unique situation. In the midst of devastation, our Papanui premises were completely undamaged. This left us in a better position than most to help.
1 o'clock in the morning I was called and told that there are 1,100 people who were at the various centres who wouldn't have breakfast the next morning, and could we help? I had to immediately call some of our staff down here at that time of the night. They were wonderful. They went out to these centres to deliver food.
And the 3 days at the factory did stay closed. Other staff were helping clear silt from people's driveways, delivering food parcels, getting involved with setting up the ADRA base that Evan and Victoria were involved with, moving stock for them.
The
Behind us we've got the Adra Aranui Oasis Cafe, and we've got a caravan there which is serving hot meals for community members that are affected by the earthquake. People who have had, up until very recently, no power, no water, no sewerage systems, and they've really relied on getting support from elsewhere to just perform their day-to-day functions. And we've been able to provide food and water for those affected community members.
Sanitarium and Adra really needed each other in the Christchurch response. We certainly needed the sanitarium. We couldn't have done it effectively by any means without the sanitarium. It was great to have their support and their willingness. The number of times that I went to sanitarium staff in Christchurch and said, look, this is a problem, how can we resolve it? And they came always with a smile, with a solution. It was brilliant. We worked together really well.
It was obvious within the first few hours that the Food and Grocery Council and our membership had a job to do to ensure a consistent food supply into Christchurch. Some of our members had product on the road within hours heading down south. For example, Johnson & Johnson and Sanitarium immediately, even within the first hour, had plans in place to do what they needed to do to make sure product got through and into the people of Christchurch. Distribution was a major issue for us because the usual supply chain networks were completely decimated initially. So the Food and Grocery Council arranged for a lot of products to be delivered direct to the sanitarium operation, and from there, using four-wheel drive vehicles and trailers, we relied on Sanitarium and Adra to get the products through to the people of Christchurch. Thank goodness for Sanitarium and the Adventists. They had a plan and they just executed that plan in a no-fuss manner and made a huge difference to people on the ground.
Our guiding business ethic is to produce products that contribute to the health and well-being of the communities we operate in. And when one of those communities is threatened, we feel obligated to help maintain their health and well-being in any other way we can. New Zealand is one of our communities, and we will always be ready to help whenever we are needed.
Did you hear the key message? They had a plan. We didn't have a plan, God had a plan. You know, there are so many things so many opportunities that we can take. We just need to ask God, what's the best thing that we can do? And after a while, within about 6 weeks, we had to end it. It had to come to an end. Water was starting to come back on, sewer was starting to come back on, infrastructure was starting to work again. And we needed to make sure that the communities weren't dependent on us. We needed to hand it over to them to get their lives back to normal. We left the caravan there for months afterwards, right through the winter, because we didn't know when you were going to need it again. Right now, it's one of those situations where it was actually quite sad to go back and see the old church, to see where it all used to be. But in some of the Bible says, continue praying, keeping alert and always thanking God. Also pray for us that God will give us an opportunity to tell people his message. And I saw the dead, great and small, this is from Revelation, standing before the throne, and the books were opened. Then another book was opened, which is the book of life, and the dead were judged by what was written in the books according to what they had done. And we're talking about everybody has an opportunity to do something for each other. Right now, that site, The church is demolished. It's bare. I'm hoping that when the new church goes up, that the people will remember what happened in 2011. I'm hoping that we have another opportunity to then reacquaint ourselves with the people that really needed us. I'm so pleased that we were able to be part of this program. I know we never got on TV. I know our supporters used to say, why do we not see this on television? You know, we were so fortunate that we weren't under the scrutiny of the TV cameras. Our friends and other organisations who just said we were so tied up with promoting, with publicity, with visiting politicians, we could not do what you guys did. And I thank God that we were able to do this. And I'm looking constantly for ways where we can reach out to people, meet their needs, be their friend, and show them that God loves them.